Welcome back to Stormi Tells Ghost Stories, Haunted Paris on my Girls Rock Productions channel. In this week's episode, I will be visiting a villa that was the scene of a gruesome murder, the beautiful castle in the countryside, the town that serial killer Henri Landru called home, and the building that is considered by some to be the center of the French Revolution, the haunted house of Avenue Frochot, Versailles, La Villa Landru, and l'Hôtel de Ville. I will start with the villa in the artistic district of Paris, the haunted house of Avenue Frochot. Remember to like and subscribe. Notoriously the most haunted house in Paris after a chambermaid was murdered inside the walls, Number 1 Avenue Frochot has been rumored to be filled with secrets and dark forces since the 19th century. Avenue Frochot is home to some of Paris's most affluent citizens. These elite are able to live behind their iron fences, away from the dangers of the streets. But this little alcove is also home to the centuries-old mystery of the haunted house of Avenue Frochot. Some famous writers and artists of Paris's vibrant art scene have a history of passing through this beautiful avenue. The writers Alexandre Dumas and Victor Hugo lived here at one time, and so did the painter Toulouse-Lautrec, who also had a studio at number 15. It was also home to some people like movie director Jean Renoir and jazz guitarist Django Reinhardt. The composer Victor Massey actually died in number 1, the house that is now considered to be haunted today. Although the whole avenue can look a little haunted with the stained glass windows and the gargoyles on the front, only one house can be remembered as the most haunted house in all of Paris. The ghost isn't one of the powerful and rich occupants that have owned it throughout the years. It is said to be that of a chambermaid who was brutally murdered inside the house at the beginning of the 1900s. She was working for the director of Ville, where she was walking up the stairs and was stabbed with a poker. Her killer was never caught, and she is haunting the place now, even over a century after her death. Rumor has it that in the dead of night, eerie footsteps are heard echoing off the walls of the haunted house, even when it's vacant. Some people even see shadows moving through the windows or hear disembodied voices coming from the walls. From that day on, there is said to be a curse on the house that was built back in 1839. A theater critic by the name of Matthew Gillet died in the house, paralyzed on his bed in the same place and position that Victor Massey died 100 years before. Sylvie Vartan bought it back in the 1970s, but fled from the house only a few days later. Her reasoning for leaving is because of the ghost haunting it. Now, the current owner is a professor of medicine, and he denies any paranormal activity going on in the house. So now let's step away from the beautiful little avenue and head over to the countryside, where we will find what started out as a hunting lodge and transformed into a great palace, Versailles. The beautiful Versailles gets its start all the way back in August 1607, when the Dauphin, which is the Crown Prince of France, Louis XIII, visited the countryside for his first hunting trip. He was only 5 years old at the time and fell in love with the place instantaneously. His father, King Henry IV of France, was proud of his son for finding this beautiful piece of land. It would be another 10 years, however, before the Dauphin would get a chance to visit Versailles again. This is because he would be crowned king at the age of 8 when his father was murdered by a man named Francois Roubaix. When he returned, Versailles just felt like home again. It wasn't until 1623 that a small hunting lodge was built where later Versailles would arise. King Louis XIII would start using the lodge the next year, and he would have it rebuilt in 1631. It is this new structure that would become the basis of the palace that stands today. One very important historic event would take place at this palace, the Day of the Dupe. This took place around November 11th, 1630. The king's mother, Marie de Medici, got into a political disagreement with Cardinal Richelieu. She wanted the Cardinal's career to be over and was convinced that her son, King Louis XIII, would be on her side with this. She was wrong about that, and King Louis XIII surprisingly took the side of the Cardinal. Marie would eventually be exiled to Compiègne. King Louis XIV absolutely loved Versailles, and he would turn it into his full-time residence, moving the court and government into it in 1682. When Louis XIV died, it was far from finished, but the foundations of the Grand Palace were made during his reign. The court would abandon Versailles upon his death, and it would go through a long period of neglect. Finally, in June of 1722, King Louis XV would return to Versailles. He wanted to complete the work of his predecessor. Louis XV didn't like the large public places inside the palace, so he created smaller, more private rooms. Even though he loved the place, he never lived there. In 1757, Louis XV was stabbed between the ribs by a man named Robert François Damiens while leaving Versailles. His life was actually saved because he was wearing a lot of layers of clothes because it was the winter. Damiens was tortured and then drawn and quartered, like Ravaillac years earlier. Damiens had served in the French army and was frequently around the French Parliament. The Parliament didn't approve of some of Louis XV's actions. Damiens was easily influenceable, which led to the failed assassination. But this would cause the cracks in the French monarchy. Even the most famous hall in the palace has a dark story behind it. The Hall of Mirrors was created in the 17th century when it was decided that all materials and construction work on the palace should be made in France. Because the art of making mirrors was a Venetian one, that was a problem. So, to get what they wanted, a few Venetian artisans were convinced in creating this marvelous hall. In response, the Venetian government ordered the artisans to be assassinated to protect the mirror-making techniques from the French. That could have been the first step towards the French Revolution, which would end in the execution of Louis XV's successor, King Louis XVI, and his wife Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette was very much in love with the jewels, wealth, and life at Versailles. She moved there at a young age and did not understand what life was like outside the palace, where people were poor and hungry. It became so bad that it was actually hard to get bread in France. This is when Marie made her infamous statement, "Let them eat cake," when told about what was going on in the streets of France. This frivolous remark and her extravagant parties and heavy taxes angered the public. The next event would only add to the matter, even though Marie Antoinette was completely innocent. The straw that would break the camel's back was the affair of the diamond necklace. Now, story has it, the Cardinal Rohan, Grand Armenier of France, led an extravagant lifestyle which would annoy Marie Antoinette. This caused him to fall out of her favor. The Cardinal wanted nothing more than to regain her good graces when he would run into the self-proclaimed Countess Lamotte, Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy. She would offer to help him. She convinced the Cardinal that she was a close friend of the Queen, but this was a lie. Truth was, she never met the woman. The Countess was, in fact, an impostor and a thief. And as a thief, she recognized a sucker when she saw one. She arranged a meeting at night. Standing in the shadows, a queen look-alike, who was actually a prostitute, told the Cardinal he could make it up to her. All she wanted was a diamond necklace in return. But this wasn't just any diamond necklace. It was an exclusive necklace created by the crown jewelers Bowman and Besenge, and it was very beautiful and exorbitantly expensive. It had over 650 diamonds and weighed over 2,800 carats. The Cardinal made a deal with the jewelers and bought the necklace for the Queen. He gave it to the Countess, who told him she would give it to the Queen on his behalf. In reality, she would give the necklace to her husband. As one would expect, the jewelers never got their money. They wrote letters to Marie Antoinette asking what happened. She was oblivious to the entire incident, and the Cardinal was arrested. Now, he was set free, and the Countess and her accomplices were also arrested, so all's well that ends well, right? Well, it should have ended there, but Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette wanted to clear their names of all charges in court, but the opposite would happen. At this point, the French people had had enough of the monarchy. The two royals were arrested in Versailles and later both were beheaded by the guillotine. They at least spared Louis the embarrassment and let him arrive to his execution in a glass carriage. Marie Antoinette was brought on a dung cart, and the people would soak their sleeves in her blood. The French court would leave Versailles in 1789 and never return. Even Napoleon didn't want to settle in the palace because of its reputation. It has been a museum since 1837, and many visitors to the museum today have claimed to have paranormal experiences of all kinds. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette are said to still roam the hallways of the palace. People will hear Louis calling out to his wife. The garden is also said to be haunted. Some people claim to see a woman in black mourning in the garden. But this garden is also home to the most famous ghost story to come out of Versailles. Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were visiting the palace in August 1901. The two women took to this trip to get to know each other better, since they were both about to start working together at their new school as principal and vice principal. They decided to visit Petit Trianon, which is a personal castle of Marie Antoinette. The place is so massive, the two ladies got lost in the palace garden. They crossed a bridge and found themselves surrounded by smaller buildings and people wearing old-fashioned clothes. A man with scarred face from smallpox stared at them before disappearing. They also saw a lady sketching in the garden. The two women felt an extremely uneasy, uncomfortable feeling, along with the feeling of dread they could not explain. A footman walked towards them and told them they went the wrong way. He then proceeded to point them in the right direction. The woman followed his instructions, and they soon felt the uneasy feeling dissipate, and everything looked normal again. Now, these women would not speak of what they saw that day for months after, but when they finally did, they realized that they had the exact same story. They fully believed that they walked into a time slip, and that the lady they saw sketching was the Marie Antoinette on the day of her arrest. First, the site of a brutal murder, then the castle on the countryside. Next, let's head over to the villa that a notorious serial killer called home. La Villa Landru. Just outside of Paris, in a small suburb of Cambrai, there is a villa that has a very dark story to tell. It is in this villa where the infamous serial killer Landru would carry out his crimes from 1915 to 1919. In the outside of this building, it looks like it can be on a postcard. In fact, it was on one. But inside was a house of horrors. Henri Desiree Landru, aka the Bluebird of Cambrai, and Francis Lily Hart's killer, would be convicted of killing 10 war widows in the wake of World War I. I do have a Stormi Talks True Crime video that goes into his actual crimes on both this channel and my Patreon. The link is in my description box below. The video will be posted this Thursday, so I will put the link in once it's posted. Joining the starting tier on my Patreon gives you access to extended content for Stormi Talks True Crime and my own ghost hunting adventures where I visit haunted locations with a few of my fellow ghost tour guides. Now, back to the story. So on his birthday, April 12, 1919, Landru was arrested at an apartment near Paris's Gare du Nord, which he was sharing with his 24-year-old mistress, Fernande Segre. While it is reported that he had been in romantic correspondence with at least 283 women during the war, and that 72 of these women would disappear, he was only convicted of killing 10 of these women, and then one of the women's sons, bringing the total number to 11. Despite never finding the bodies, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. Landru would be executed by the guillotine on February 25th, 1921. While there are no official ghost stories coming out of the villa, that doesn't stop the whispering around the town of the Villa Landru. I took you to the beautiful artistic alcove, the magnificent palace on the countryside, and the cozy villa with a dark past. Our final stop on this week's tour is going to be the building that was the center of the French Revolution, l'Hôtel de Ville, or City Hall. L'Hôtel de Ville has been the seat of Paris City Council since 1357. This translates to City Hall, and it is one of Paris's most enduring landmarks. The site being the seat of Paris City Council even predates the building itself. It was only in 1533 that King Francis I decided to formally have the City Hall constructed. North Wing would be added by the King Henry IV and King Louis XIII between 1605 and 1628. During the 14th century, the courtyard in front of the building was the site of public executions in the city. This was later repeated with the guillotine being installed there in 1792, which was used a lot during the French Revolution. The City Hall and all the city archives would burn down in 1871 by the Paris Commune. It was rebuilt over a period of 20 years. The exterior would follow the original design of the building, but the interior would be significantly different. In 1944, as Paris was being liberated from the Germans, the Hôtel de Ville was made the headquarters of the National Council of Resistance. This is where Charles de Gaulle would famously appear on the balcony to make his speech to the celebrating crowd below. Legend has it that the halls are haunted by those who were executed in the courtyard. Many visitors to Hôtel de Ville claim to see Marie Antoinette and will sometimes hear a woman's voice in the faint, cool breeze. There is going to be a bonus stop tonight because just up the block there is the most cursed road in all of Paris, the Rue de l'Hôtel de Ville. What is now a charming thoroughfare in the 4th arrondissement, the Rue de l'Hôtel de Ville has seen many horrors pass over it. Epidemics and bloody brawls, all part of a macabre past that has earned its reputation of the most cursed street in Paris. During medieval times, the street was still called Rue de la Valle, after many foolers who worked the area. Later, the Morteliers operated there because it was so close to the Seine. This would lead to the first name change, Rue de la Mortellerie, and that is when the troubles would begin. In 1832, the capital was hit by a violent wave of Morbius cholera, which killed thousands. The center of the outbreak was Saint-Paris district because it was of its proximity to the river. Rue de la Mortellerie suffered 671 deaths from the disease, which was 6.4% of the population, an all-time record to this day. The troubles wouldn't stop there. It wouldn't be a curse if they did. Back in 1848, the June Days began, and this was a period of great revolt by Parisian workers in the face of the closure of national workshops. Numerous clashes would break out across Paris, leaving more than 4,000 dead. Rue de Mortellerie was one of the bloodiest scenes of the brawls, the corpses lying on the ground and the blood flowing in the cracks of the cobblestones. With such a bloody history, I wouldn't be surprised if the street was still haunted by residents of the past. Well, that concludes this week's video of Stormi Talks Ghost Stories Haunted Paris. I hope you enjoyed hearing more of the darkest stories the City of Love has to offer. The haunted house of Avenue Frochot, Versailles, the Ville Landru, and l'Hôtel de Ville. Remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to check out some of my other playlists while you are here. On Stormi Teaches Music, I release a cover video on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern and a video of me teaching the song covered on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can catch the live stream of the lesson on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on my Patreon. On the Stormi Does Art playlist, I have some partial videos of my live stream you can get on my Patreon for the gold tier or higher. These streams are daily at 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. There is a link in my Patreon link to my Patreon in the description box below. Finally, check out Stormi Talks True Crime for some of the most heinous crimes in history. New videos are posted on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. For anyone who wants to make a one-time donation to the channel to help keep it running while I'm building my audience, there is the QR code on my Venmo and CashApp on the screen. There is also a link to both in the description box below. If you are ever in Wilmington, North Carolina area, sign up for the Wilmington Ghosts Walking Tours or the Wilmington Sprits and Spirits Pub Crawl with U.S. Ghost Adventures. You can have me or one of our other talented guides show you around the historic downtown and hear some of the darkest stories the beautiful city on the beach has to offer. While you're visiting, if you decide to stay or buy a vacation home, check out my Moving to Coastal Carolina channel and contact me, as I am a licensed realtor in the southeastern North Carolina area. Tune in next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the next video on Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted Paris. Until then, have a great week and be safe.